welcome along to the Property Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ed McKnight.
I'm Andrew Nicol.
And today on the show, we're talking about tactics you can use to negotiate. Yes, that's right. I say negotiate because there are 8 of them that we're going to take you through today. Now, we actually talked about these at our most recent webinar, but I think they're really worthwhile repeating and reminding you about because we're going into a phase of the market where negotiation is going to become really important. Now, Andrew, we've got 8 to get through, so kick us off.
So the first one, and I think this is one of the most important ones, is get the property under contract. Now, obviously, this does not work if it's an auction because once you buy at an auction, you're unconditional. But if it's a price by negotiation, if it's a advertised price, if it's a tender, if it's a deadline sale, get it under contract subject to something that allows you to get out of the contract if it doesn't work out to be the right deal. So what I mean by that, not just a finance clause. You can't rely, like the good old days, on a finance clause to be able to walk away from a contract. You have to have something in there like due diligence so that allows you to complete your due diligence. And I know this requires a bit of pushback with real estate agents, but again, it's becoming more of a buyer's market. So you'll see this be a bit more easy to get across the line. Now, the reason you need to get under contract is you can always negotiate the price down, other parts of the contract later on. But if you don't have the property in control, if you haven't got control of that property, then if someone else walks along and offers the same price but a cleaner offer, the vendor's going to take that. The seller's going to take that contract, so you don't actually have the room to negotiate at that stage because someone else pipped you at the post.
100%. Now, number 2 is to actually ask for the discount or ask for something. You're not going to get anything extra unless you actually go ahead and ask for it. Now, just as a bit of a reminder for any of the investors who are working with us here at Opes, if you come through our process, all of the prices are pre-negotiated. So we offer what we call no haggle pricing. But if you're doing this for yourself, you're not buying through us or you're negotiating an existing property, you've got to go ahead and ask for that. And if you've got it through under contract already, you'll typically do that through your lawyer. You send through what you're asking for.
Yep. Now, the next one that flows on from that is actually give some reasons, give some context to why you want a discount, because just asking for a discount doesn't necessarily mean that the developer or the vendor is going to be interested in giving you one. So just a few minutes ago before recording this, I actually had an email screenshot from a developer that had been sent to them, and it said, it was from one of their clients that they're working with. Andrew and Ed said that they're discounts of this, so I want my price to reflect that, which, you know, is quite funny because someone obviously listening to the show thought, oh, well, I'm going to ask for a bit of a discount and I'm going to use the justification that Andrew and Ed said the prices are coming down.
I think that was one from the webinar where we said 2-bedroom townhouses, Christchurch used to be 650 to 750. They should now be between, I think we said 600, 650.
Something like
so
that.
They're using it as a tool. Now, let me ask you this. If you were somebody who's listening to this show and you weren't, coming through our process, we've got no haggle pricing, what sort of reasons would you be giving a developer to try and negotiate that down?
So I think the market's a good one right now, just expectations of a market drop. Again, I don't think it's necessarily going to happen everywhere or to the extent that some of the economists are predicting, but you can still ask for it. You can still say, well, this has been put out there, so I want to make sure that I'm getting the best deal.
And I think as well, Andrew, you said on the webinar comparable sales. So what sort of things would you be doing that somebody listening to the show can actually go and do in order to do that?
Well, if you're looking at a 2-bedroom townhouse in Christchurch, for example, see what else is 2-bedroom townhouse. And if it's a comparable area, comparable spec, then ask for a comparable price.
Rightio, let's get on to number 4. And this is my absolute favorite one, which is ask for things other than price. Now, I always believe whenever you go into any negotiation, you want as many levers or as many bargaining chips as possible. If you're only able to negotiate on price, then you might have a bit of a hard time. But let's say that you're dealing with a developer who's pretty sticky on price and you still want the deal. Well, can you negotiate for other things? Because you might not be able to get a scorcher of a deal on the price, but if you can negotiate all of the other terms to go your way, then that can still be a scorcher of the deal. And in fact, in tomorrow's episode, Andrew, we're going to take everybody through a whole heap of things that people can negotiate for other than price. But we'll give that to you a full list tomorrow. What's number 5?
Number 5 is get a valuation. So this is when you actually get someone to come and inspect the property, go away, look at what's sold on the market, and actually do the comparison for you. So again, I don't think that Trade Me is necessarily the best place to get a comparison, because just because someone's asking for something doesn't mean that's what an actual sale has been. And if you don't have tools to see what the actual sales have been, then get a valuer to come in, look at comparable properties, comparable sales, and figure out what they think a realistic price for the property is. Then what you want to do is take that, unless it's a higher price than you're paying, take that, go back to your seller or your vendor or your developer if you're buying off plans, and say, hey, look, I've got this valuation. The valuer thinks it's worth X and you're pricing it at Y. You need to come down to X for me to go through with this property. And of course, a valuer is a professional. This is someone that's trained in assessing what a market should be for a property. And look, it is a little bit of guesswork to a certain extent, but as someone with a degree in valuation, so it gives you a bit of credibility.
Now, if somebody was going to do that, obviously that's going to cost a bit of money. It might cost $700 for instance.
$700 to $1,000.
Now, somebody'd have to be pretty serious about that property and have a reasonable belief that the valuation is going to come in under what the developer is pricing it at. So at what point would you be having the comfort to go ahead and spend the money?
Look, I think if you know you're going to get the finance and you are serious about the deal, I always say, put the property under contract at the price you're happy to pay for it, and then negotiate, because you don't want to waste your time if you're not actually serious about it. Don't just put everything under contract and see if you can negotiate it down. Put it down at the price that you're happy to pay, and then use some of these tactics to see if you can get a lower price.
Well, one other thing that I just want to point out as well, Andrew, is if somebody ordered the valuation on their own behalf, they wouldn't be able to then use that same valuation going to the bank, right?
Yeah, but you can always go through the bank to get the valuation and then just use that valuation to go back to the vendor.
So you talk to your mortgage broker first?
Absolutely. Get your broker always to order your valuation, because nowadays, if you order a valuation yourself, that's not going to be used by the bank. So you want to use the bank's one to be able to negotiate.
Yeah, okay, because if you're serious about buying that property, you may have to pay for that valuation anyway.
Yeah, correct. One thing that I wanted to say before as well, sometimes we think, this just seems a bit high in terms of a price. I've had instances where I've got valuations that have come in way over what I'm paying as well, and then I realise I'm just being tight and need to just accept the offer.
Yeah, it sounds a bit like you. Let's come across number 6, which is to confirm on the basis of. Now, this is one of my favourites. So you've got this property under contract, and maybe you've been going a wee bit back and forth with the developer. Now, we're at crunch time. We're about to end due diligence, whether you're either going to buy the property or you're not. Now, this is where you can say something along the lines of, I'm happy to confirm, or I'm happy to go unconditional on the basis of a 5% deposit. I'm happy to go unconditional on the basis of a $10,000 price reduction, whatever it happens to be. So what I'm essentially suggesting is that you frame up your ask in the way that it's like, this deal will go ahead. I am definitely going to do this if I get XYZ things. Now, that is much more powerful than if you were doing that right at the start of due diligence, because, hey, you might be asking for something, but the developer has no guarantee that you're still going to proceed with the deal if they grant you these things. Now, framing it up in this way means they've actually got some certainty around what you're asking for.
Yeah, it's a great way of doing it. Next one is to dangle the deposit. So I spoke on the webinar about the good old days when we used to actually write out a check and attach that to the sale and purchase. So put $20,000 in a check and then put that on there. Again, if it was conditional, I'd still get my deposit back. That's the way that it works. But showing that I actually had that money ready to commit or making it a higher deposit was often great, because the agent would think, great, I'm going to get my commission soon because the money will be already in my bank account. Now, you can use this for things like tenders, deadline sales, advertised prices, price by negotiations, existing properties. It's not really any special treatment when it's an auction or buying off plans, because you have to pay the auction deposit straight away anyway. And if you're buying off plans, the developer doesn't get your deposit anyway. It sits in a lawyer's trust account, or it should anyway. So there's no real benefit there. But you can, if you are buying an existing property by one of the earlier methods, then what you can do is you can put in the contract that the deposit is paid on acceptance of the sale and purchase, not on confirmation. What that means is your deposit will fall due as soon as both parties sign the sale and purchase agreement. So that means that the real estate agent knows that the deposit is in the account and you're pretty serious.
So when would you use that one?
So you'd use that if you were buying an existing home by normal negotiation.
Yeah. And so the real estate agent might push for that to be done because they know that this is a serious buyer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, I quite like that. I'd probably do that and then not pay the deposit anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what I'd do, because then once it's signed, it's already signed.
Oh, is that like the time we bought the magazine?
It's 100% like that time. Number eight. This one's for you, Andrew.
The final one is be prepared to walk away from any deal. There will always be other deals. So if something doesn't feel right, if you aren't getting the final deal that you want, again, don't waste your time or other people's time signing up for properties if you're not like at least 90% serious anyway. But if you're 90% serious, put it under contract and then use these tactics to negotiate, but be prepared to walk away if you get a valuation that comes in 100 grand under what the sale and purchase says, then I'd probably be prepared to walk away from that.
Yeah, and if you're not prepared to walk away, you're not in a strong position to negotiate. Now, you can definitely try, but if you're so worried about losing the deal because you really want it, well, then you're going to be more hesitant to negotiate. And this often happens with owner-occupiers because one partner, she wants to go in and negotiate hard, and then, Mr. is saying, oh, but I really want the house, so don't go too hard. Something along those lines. I know that's happened in your situation. Yeah. Now, just coming back to that process, Andrew, let's say you get it under contract, and usually you're negotiating through your lawyer. You're saying, can you please send to the seller's lawyer?
Just to clarify, you negotiate usually through your agent until it's under contract, and then with your lawyer usually after that. As a courtesy, I'd always let my real estate agent know. So I'd say, hey, look, the valuation's come in 20 grand lighter than what I was expecting. I'm going to ask for a 20 grand discount, or I'm not prepared to go ahead with this deal anymore. And then they can ring the vendor and let the vendor know so that they're at least expecting it. And then
you're preempting it.
And then what you do is you let your lawyer know that you are happy to confirm subject to a 20K price reduction. That's how I do it.
Yeah. And how often do those price reductions get accepted?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. I've been making up a number.
Okay, well, let me go to the next point then. That's just important to ask. So it's important to note as well that when you're saying I'm going to confirm on the basis of, or I'm going to confirm subject to, that's often what's known as a without prejudice offer. So even if they say, no, we're not going to accept that, you should still have the option to confirm at the original contract price or subject to any other conditions you've already agreed to.
One thing you got to be really careful with that. So I tried to do this in a deal once, and the vendor held out replying saying no, hoping that the time would lapse on the contract and then they could cancel the contract.
Yeah.
So while my lawyer was chasing up trying to get confirmation of it, so at 1 minute to close, we confirmed on the original price.
Yeah, so just to explain that, because, we're getting quite technical. So you'd said, I'm happy to confirm, I'm going to go unconditional, subject to XYZ things. Now, in that instance, they actually had some better offers coming in. So they wanted your offer to lapse. They were like, no, we want to get rid of this Andrew Nicol guy. We want to take somebody else's offer. So you knowing that 1 minute before the deadline was like, actually, we're just going to take the original deal. So that's really a really good, important point just to note. Just because you say, hey, I'm going to confirm on the basis of a 20K price reduction, that doesn't mean that you lose the original deal. Now, is there anything the lawyers have to make sure they say? Do they have to say this is a without prejudice offer?
So my lawyer, Sue Foley, would always say, we reserve our client's right in all respects.
Yeah, okay. So you might just want to have that conversation with your lawyer to make sure that when they're making that, you're not missing out on the fallback, which is taking the original contract or whatever else you've already agreed to. Now, let me ask you, just before we wrap up, what is your favourite tactic on here?
Getting it under contract first. That is
100%.
definitely the thing that I think is most important. Too many people try and negotiate before they've even got a property under contract, and then they get pipped at the post.
Yeah. So one option as well, put in a clean offer to get it under contract, then make it
and by a
negotiate.
clean offer, just subject to due diligence. That's all you need. And then, and again, push your agent, tell them that's what you want in there. And they'll try and say things like, well, what due diligence do you want? Oh, well, I want my finance. Okay, let's just put finance in there then, because they know that will lock you into a contract.
Yeah, but you're saying, no, we need the due diligence clause.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, let's wrap it up there, but make sure you tune in for tomorrow's episode. And for any of you guys watching on YouTube, make sure that you tune into the audio version of the podcast that's coming out tomorrow, because we're going to be talking about all of the other things that you can negotiate other than price. There are going to be a couple of surprises in here for you that you may not have thought of. So make sure you tune in on Apple, Spotify, wherever else you listen to podcasts. Let's wrap it up there, but please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the Property Academy podcast. Really does help us get the message out to more people. Thanks for listening to the Property Academy podcast. I'm your host, Evan Knight. And we're going to be back again tomorrow with even more daily strategies, tactics, and insights to help you get the most out of the New Zealand property market. Until next time.